Moonlighting, 1985 to 1989, was one of the most iconic and groundbreaking TV shows of its time, blending comedy, romance, and mystery in a way few shows had done before. Starring Bruce Willis and Cybill Shepherd, the series became a cultural phenomenon. But while the show brought laughter and unforgettable moments to audiences, time has taken its toll on the cast. Sadly, several talented actors from Moonlighting have passed away, leaving fans with both nostalgia and sadness. In this video, we'll look back at their lives, their contributions to the show, and the lasting legacy they left behind. Charles Rocket was born on August 28, 1949, and embodied the role of Richard Addison in Moonlighting in 1985 at the age of 36. Richard, the reckless and charming brother of David Addison, brought a jolt of energy and instability to the show. Rocket's real life reflected that same duality. Once a promising talent, he gained fame as a cast member on Saturday Night Live, but his career was nearly destroyed overnight after uttering an unscripted obscenity on live television. Though he clawed his way back with roles in Dumb and Dumber and television appearances, he never fully recovered from the public fallout. That incident followed him like a shadow, sabotaging auditions and costing him opportunities. He married Beth Rocket, an artist, and they had a son, Zane, but the pressures of his failing career strained the marriage. Financial insecurities set in during the early 2000s, and Charles fell into a deep depression. Despite his quick wit and charming exterior, those closest to him knew he was unraveling. He felt trapped, too famous to be anonymous, too tainted to be embraced. In 2005, after years of emotional turbulence and professional obscurity, Rocket was found dead on his Connecticut property in what was ruled a suicide by self-inflicted neck wounds. He passed away on October 7, 2005, at the age of 56. Jack Bannon was born on June 14, 1940, and stepped into the role of the club owner in 1985, when he was 45 years old. As the charismatic nightclub operator, his character served as a bridge between the underworld and the precinct, never quite trustworthy, but always essential. In real life, Jack was the epitome of a journeyman actor, always working, but never truly seen. His breakout came late and faded quickly. Beyond Moonlighting, he was better known for fleeting guest roles and regional theater productions that barely paid enough to survive. Despite being born into a family with Hollywood roots, his mother being benighted, he carried a heavy chip on his shoulder about never living up to her fame. Jack married Ellen Travolta, but their union was marked by long separations, unspoken resentments, and the tragic death of their only daughter, Rachel, in a car accident in 1989. Jack was diagnosed with cancer in 2015 but kept it a secret even from close friends. By then, he was living in semi-isolation in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, estranged from many in the industry and quietly attending AA meetings between radiation treatments. His biographical play, The Silent Second Son, which chronicled his lifelong struggle to escape his mother's shadow, never made it to Broadway. Jack Bannon died on October 25, 2017, at age 77, after a long and painful battle with cancer. Caitlyn Clark, born on May 3, 1952, was cast as Elaine Johnson in 1987 at the age of 35. Elaine was everything TV women of the era were not: sharp-tongued, bold, fiercely intelligent, and unapologetically independent. She clashed with the system, the men around her, and often with herself, embodying a restless spirit that demanded more from the world than it was willing to give. Caitlyn mirrored her character's ferocity off-screen but suffered in silence behind it. After an acclaimed start with Dragon Slayer, 1981, her stars seemed destined to rise, but instead it stalled. Directors praised her talent but labeled her difficult, a curse for any woman in Hollywood. Offers dwindled, and Caitlyn pivoted to regional theater, a step that felt like failure to a woman who once graced red carpets. She never married, though she had a long-term relationship with a fellow actor who left her abruptly when her cancer diagnosis was revealed. She had no children, and her extended family lived far from the acting world, unable or unwilling to understand her pain. Her solitude deepened in the late 90s, marked by brief hospitalizations for depression and letters never mailed to old friends who had moved on. Caitlyn fought ovarian cancer for years, undergoing invasive treatments that ravaged her body. Ultimately, she passed away on September 9, 2004, at the age of 52. Vincent Skylli was born on November 11, 1948, and played Rodney Dillon in 1985 at the age of 37. His portrayal of the eerie, shadowy Rodney added a strange tension to every episode in which he appeared, his unsettling calm masking something dangerously unknowable. Much like his character, Vincent was a man apart, never fully belonging to the Hollywood circles he drifted through. A gifted character actor with a face that defied forgetfulness, he was cast repeatedly as oddballs, villains, and misfits, pigeonholed by his appearance, not his talent. He married harpist Allison Tucker in 1992, but the marriage was brief and strained, two artistic souls who could never quite harmonize. They had one child, Andrea, who later changed their name and identity to avoid the public eye entirely. Vincent found fleeting happiness in teaching acting to autistic children in Sicily, but the piece was marred by poor health, money troubles, and unresolved grief over the deaths of his brother and father within months of each other. Diagnosed with lung cancer in 2004, he returned to Italy, where he spent his final days in a small mountain village, surrounded by strangers who only knew him as the American actor. Vincent Skylli died on December 26, 2005, at 57, his brilliance barely acknowledged by the industry that never quite knew what to do with him. Nicholas Pryor, born on January 28, 1935, portrayed Dr. Simon Brill in 1989 at age 54, a man of medicine and reason amidst chaos. Brill was steady, insightful, and compassionate, often tending to the wounded, physically and emotionally, with a measured calm that offered brief respite in a turbulent world. Nicholas, too, was a man of quiet dignity, but his life was marked by sorrow that would never fully heal. Though he enjoyed sporadic success with roles in risky business and executive decision, Pryor was perpetually typecast, never the lead, always the supporting shadow. He married once, to actress Christine Belford, and together they had two children, Thomas and Julia. But the family fractured after Julia's sudden death from a drug overdose in her early 20s, an event that crushed Nicholas's spirit and strained his marriage beyond repair. Christine left soon after, and Nicholas became a recluse, devoting his later years to charity work, mostly in children's hospitals, perhaps seeking redemption he would never openly admit. His own health began to decline in the 2010s, and he was diagnosed with cancer in 2022. Despite aggressive treatment, the disease advanced quickly. Nicholas Pryor passed away on October 7, 2024, at the age of 89. The doctor who once healed others left the world in near silence, with the ache of personal loss still clinging to his name. George Coe, born May 10, 1929, stepped into the role of Lou LaSalle in Moonlighting in 1985 at age 56, portraying a world-weary detective whose stoicism masked decades of moral compromise. Coe's own life reflected the quiet tragedies of a nearly man. He was one of the original Saturday Night Live cast members but was unceremoniously dropped after the first episode, a humiliation that haunted him. Though he appeared in films like Kramer vs. Kramer and lent his voice to Transformers, Dark of the Moon, most of his career was spent behind the scenes or as an uncredited extra. Roles that promised breakout status dissolved into footnotes, and he grew increasingly bitter about being overlooked. He married Bonnie Silver in 1963, and they had one daughter, Kate, who struggled with heroin addiction throughout her teens and died from an overdose in 2012. Their marriage did not survive the aftermath. Bonnie left him in 1984, citing his emotional unavailability and obsession with work. Coe spiraled into alcoholism, and a failed stage adaptation of Waiting for Godot, which he financed with borrowed money, left him bankrupt. In his final years, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease and moved into a care facility, where he reportedly spent days staring out the window, waiting for phone calls that never came. He died on July 18, 2015, at the age of 86. Richard Belzer, born on August 4, 1944, portrayed Leonard in Moonlighting in 1985 at the age of 41, bringing his offbeat, dark humor to a role that danced on the line between comedy and pain. Belzer channeled much of his own suffering into the character. After surviving brutal abuse from his stepfather, he used comedy as both weapon and shield. He was fired from Saturday Night Live after just one season, dismissed as too dark for mainstream tastes, and spent years hustling on the comedy circuit while battling depression and anxiety. Though he found prolonged recognition as Detective John Munch on Homicide, Life on the Street and Law and Order, SVU, that role became a curse. He was typecast, creatively stifled, and never offered substantial work beyond it. His personal life was no sanctuary. His first two marriages failed quickly, and while he found more stability with third wife Harley McBride, their union was marred by his deep mistrust of the world, fueled by obsessive conspiracy theories. They had no children, and his relationship with his extended family deteriorated completely after the suicide of his brother, Leonard Jr., in 1986. Belzer also suffered from testicular cancer in the early 80s and chronic PTSD-like symptoms after Hulk Hogan injured him during a TV appearance. Sadly, Richard Belzer passed away on February 19, 2023, at the age of 78, at his home in Beaulieu-sur-Mer, France. Paul Servino, born April 13, 1939, took on the role of David Addison Sr. in Moonlighting in 1986 at the age of 47, portraying a patriarch of charm and influence, always managing to walk the fine line between warmth and manipulation. Servino was celebrated for his commanding presence in films like Goodfellas, but he yearned for recognition as an opera singer and sculptor, dreams that were continuously overshadowed by typecasting as mobsters or authoritarian figures. He married Lorraine Davis in 1966, and they had 3 children, Myrt, Amanda, and Michael. Myrt would go on to win an Academy Award, but the father-daughter relationship was marred by Paul's jealous need to be seen as the true artist in the family. His rage issues led to frequent outbursts on set and at home, often terrifying his children. His marriage eventually fell apart, and he entered a reclusive second chapter of life, battling type 2 diabetes, arthritis, and a series of strokes. In 2019, he attempted to mount a one-man opera tour, which was cancelled due to poor ticket sales. By 2022, he was wheelchair-bound and spoke rarely. He died on July 25, 2022, at 83, in his sleep, with none of the grandeur or theatricality he had once craved, just the quiet click of a ventilator and the hum of a forgotten TV in the background. Pat Corley, born June 1, 1930, brought to life Farley Rye in Moonlighting in 1985 at age 55. Rye was a master manipulator, suave yet insincere, with a deep sadness hidden beneath layers of charm. Corley, who had a distinctive voice and expressive face, found work mostly in secondary roles, bartenders, landlords, bureaucrats. He longed to be a leading man but was always cast as comic relief, a fate he resented bitterly. His marriage to Iris Carter began passionately but was eventually worn down by financial instability and Pat's frequent absences. They had one son, Hugh, who ran away at age 17 and was later arrested for armed robbery in Oklahoma. The shame drove Corley into seclusion, and he refused to speak publicly about his family ever again. As his health declined, so did his career. He suffered 2 strokes in the late 90s and was diagnosed with congestive heart failure. He lost his voice, the very tool he had built his career on, and his final years were marked by confusion, silence, and hallucinations. He died on September 11, 2006, at 76, in a dim, state-funded care home after his SAG pension ran out. None of his old colleagues attended the funeral. Robert Webber, born on October 14, 1924, portrayed the authoritative and urbane Alexander Hayes in Moonlighting in 1986, when he was 62 years old. Hayes brought gravitas to the series, his composed demeanor and quiet command serving as a moral anchor amid the chaos. Yet, Webber's life behind the camera was anything but composed. Though he had a promising start, appearing in acclaimed films like 12 Angry Men, 1957, and The Dirty Dozen, 1967, his career began to decline in the late 70s, as younger, flashier stars took the spotlight. He married actress Miranda Weber in the 1950s, but their relationship was marked by infidelity, volatility, and the quiet despair of emotional distance. They divorced after 23 years of simmering resentment. He had one daughter, Claire, from a brief affair, whom he barely knew, her existence a source of guilt he carried until death. Robert was diagnosed with ALS in the mid-1980s but kept it a secret, afraid that Hollywood would cast him off entirely. As his muscles deteriorated and speech slowed, he became reclusive, isolated by shame and pain. Friends stopped visiting, and his final days were filled with frustration, trapped in a body that no longer responded, haunted by the echoes of applause long faded. He passed away on May 19, 1989, at age 64, ravaged by ALS. Jack Blessing was born on July 29, 1951, and took on the role of McGillicuddy in Moonlighting in 1986 at the age of 35. Though a minor character, McGillicuddy left a distinct impression with his quirky demeanor and awkward yet endearing presence. Blessing's own career mirrored this peripheral presence, often cast as the oddball, the supporting man who was good enough to show up but never quite good enough to lead. His resume included roles in Moonlighting and voice work in animated films, but major stardom always eluded him. He married Laura Blessing, a costume designer, but their union dissolved after a few years, worn down by Jack's mounting insecurities and erratic emotional state. They had 2 children, Ian and Julia, but the divorce splintered the family, and his contact with them became infrequent, strained. Depression stalked him, and he was known to vanish from sets or social gatherings for weeks, unreachable and spiraling. He battled financial instability in the 2000s, his health deteriorating quietly in the background. He was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in 2016, and the pain of that final year was marked by solitude. He died on November 14, 2017, at the age of 66, alone in a hospice, clutching a photo of his children, whom he hadn't seen in over a year. Jack Murdoch, born October 28, 1922, brought a harsh dose of realism to Moonlighting when he appeared as an inmate in 1987 at the age of 65. Though his screen time was brief, his performance was unforgettable, raw, weary, and heartbreakingly human. The character embodied despair, the wear of prison life etched into every word. That authenticity came not just from talent, but from a life acquainted with suffering. Murdoch had a long, difficult journey through the entertainment world, mostly playing gruff background characters or unnamed extras. He had one shot at major stardom in the 1950s, but a scandal involving alleged ties to organized crime derailed his momentum permanently, though charges were never filed. He married twice, first to a waitress named Helen, with whom he had a son, Robert, who died in Vietnam. The loss broke their marriage, and they divorced in 1971. His second marriage to actress Betty Devereux ended bitterly after Murdoch's increasing alcoholism led to multiple arrests for public intoxication. He became a fixture in Los Angeles dive bars, often ranting to anyone who would listen about how Hollywood had chewed him up and spit him out. By the late 1990s, he was suffering from severe emphysema, the result of decades of smoking and poverty. He died on April 27, 2001, at the age of 78, in a government-subsidized nursing home with no family at his side. Kate Murtaugh, born October 29, 1920, played the minor role of the elderly woman in Moonlighting in 1986 at the age of 66. Though her appearances were fleeting, she infused them with quiet dignity, embodying the everyday struggles of the forgotten and aging. Off-screen, Kate's life was a long stretch of unfulfilled dreams and private sorrow. She started her career in a singing trio with her sisters, the Murtaugh sisters, but as the act faded with time, she turned to acting, relegated mostly to uncredited roles or bit parts. She never married, often claiming she was too peculiar for love, though friends knew she had her heart broken in her 20s by a vaudeville actor who left her for a younger chorus girl. She lived alone her entire life, in a modest apartment in Burbank surrounded by stacks of newspapers and vintage records. She kept every rejection letter she ever received, over 300, stored in a box labeled "Not Quite." In her 80s, she suffered a bad fall that left her partially immobile, but she refused to move into assisted living, saying she didn't want to die in a hallway. She passed away quietly on September 10, 2017, at the age of 96, her death unreported by major outlets, her funeral attended by 3 former neighbors and a nurse. Robert Ellenstein, born June 18, 1923, took on the role of Hines in Moonlighting in 1985 at age 62, embodying a character obsessed with precision and haunted by his own limitations. Hines was meticulous to the point of compulsion, his brilliance often misunderstood by colleagues. Ellenstein himself was similarly out of sync with the Hollywood machine. Despite early promise in films like North by Northwest, his refusal to play the game, turning down roles that he deemed intellectually empty, saw him relegated to the margins. He married Lorna Redmond in 1951, and they had 2 sons, Robert Jr. and Stephen. Tragedy devastated the family. Robert Jr. died in 1984 of a heroin overdose, and Stephen was institutionalized after a diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia. Lorna left him in 1987, unable to withstand the emotional toll. Ellenstein struggled with severe anxiety and periods of dissociation, leading to a near-fatal overdose in 1991, which he later described as unintentional but inevitable. The industry forgot him by the 2000s. He was denied entry to the Academy's in memoriam list when he passed, adding insult to a life spent seeking meaning in an art form that ultimately discarded him. He died on October 28, 2010, at the age of 87, after years of progressive dementia, in a nursing home where none of the staff recognized his name or career. Leonard Fry was born on September 4, 1938, and took on the role of Skylar Cantrell in Moonlighting in 1985, when he was 47. Skylar was the intellectual gadfly of the series, his acerbic wit slicing through the tension like a scalpel. Sarcastic, flamboyant, and undeniably sharp, he brought a much-needed edge to the often somber tone of the show. Leonard's performance was electric, but it was also one of his final major roles. Known for his Oscar-nominated work in Fiddler on the Roof and as Harold in The Boys in the Band, Leonard never saw his early success blossom into enduring stardom. Hollywood, queasy with openly gay actors in the 1980s, quietly closed doors in his face. His personal life was a patchwork of secrecy, pain, and longing. He never married, had no children, and spoke only vaguely of past loves, many of whom were rumored to have died during the AIDS crisis. Fry himself battled with internalized shame, a byproduct of growing up in a deeply conservative Jewish household where his sexuality was a source of lifelong tension. The 1980s were particularly cruel, many of his closest friends died, and Leonard was often seen alone at industry events, his once bright smile dulled by grief. His health declined rapidly after his own AIDS diagnosis in 1987, and he passed away just over a year later, on August 24, 1988, at the age of 49. Who is your favorite character in Moonlighting? How do you feel knowing that the actors have passed away? Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you don't miss future videos. Thank you so much.